They say a person's life can unravel in a single afternoon, but I learned it can also collapse over 3 silent photos on a family group chat. Before that moment, I believed I was above suspicion, known as the reliable one, the loyal treasurer, the woman who never even pocketed an extra church candy. That illusion shattered as swiftly as porcelain slipped from weary hands. In that instant, my own name became synonymous with thief, broadcasted not by strangers, but by the lips of my own family. I am 64 years old, a widow for more years than I ever imagined, clinging quietly to the routines that have kept my days orderly since my husband's passing. My daughter Mi-jung lives close by, and we share little comforts: a weekly lunch, Sunday service, the ordinary companionship of 2 women who have outlived their expectations. My work at the neighborhood church, keeping the books for our elders' fellowship, always gave me a sense of purpose. I never craved attention or praise. I simply clung to a lifelong pride in being trustworthy, especially where money touched my hands. That was my small dignity, unspoken, but carefully polished over years. Trouble arrived quietly, as trouble so often does. It was a rainy Sunday, the sort of relentless drizzle that soaks through your shoes and your patience. Our meeting hall smelled of damp umbrellas and old hymn books. As some of the elders chatted about grandchildren and aches, I reviewed our membership envelopes, counting, sorting, checking that every one was accounted for. The choir was just beginning to gather their music when word came that water was leaking into the church basement, bubbling over the threshold. There was a hurried shuffle, shifting chairs, carrying bundles. My hands were full, envelopes pinched in my grasp, and in the rush, I stuffed several into my coat pocket for safekeeping. Just a split-second gesture, born of rain and convenience. I never imagined that moment would plant a crack deep enough to swallow my peace. Days later, as I tallied sums in my ledger, I felt my breath snag. The numbers were wrong. A single envelope was missing, a particular beige one marked with a sticker as tradition dictated. Panic clamped around my chest. I tore the workroom apart, tracing every step, blaming my memory, then clinging to hope that the oversight was temporary, a simple, soon-to-be-rectified mistake. But news travels faster than truth, and my little mishap spilt out into the world before I could contain it. I learned that quiet suspicion had already breached the church's fragile boundaries, which had grown brittle with petty allegiances over the year. Supporters of the new pastor, loyalists to the old ways, critics of every gathering. My only wish had ever been to avoid those factions, but suddenly my name became ammunition in their silent war. The matter of the missing envelope became a wedge, prying open resentments that had festered throughout the congregation. Then came the family group chat. 3 photos arrived without warning, a table littered with envelopes, the edge of my handbag hanging open, and a shot of me at the office doorway, envelopes in hand, my back reflected in the smeared glass like a ghost. The comments that followed were riddled with ellipses and question marks, each word sharp as glass. Someone made a joke. It hurt more than accusation. I stared at my phone as if it would turn to stone in my hand. We called ourselves family in that chat, but that night, the distance between us felt wider than ever before. That's when the real ordeal began. Everywhere I went, across the street to the market, on the gravel path through the park, faces seemed to bristle with cold curiosity. Greetings felt thin and brittle, choked with something unspoken. I tried to smile, but could not keep my lips from trembling. Even in silence, I imagined my name twisting through conversations behind closed doors. The tough hide I had built for myself over decades began to peel away, flake by bitter flake. I repeated to myself, over and over, that the only way to end this was to face it head on. I forced myself to go through every record, every memory. It was clear. The envelope, marked with the hopeful little sticker, was logged in the book, but the paper itself had vanished. I retraced everyone's steps that day, scanning for someone who might have lingered too long, who might harbor a grudge, or even need the money. Each memory cloudier than the last. Friendships that once fit like a favorite cardigan now rubbed against me like coarse wool. Some at church suddenly avoided my eyes, while others offered oversweet kindness that stung for its falseness. Word spread that the committee was debating whether I could stay on as treasurer. A handful of the elders were boycotting meetings altogether. All these years of service, and all it took was a whisper, a missing envelope, to unravel it. Even more cruelly, the group chat served as my daily trial. Some cousins and in-laws expressed concern, others were quick to scold. Mijong, my own daughter, said nothing at all. Her silence weighed more than 100 angry words. I stood outside her bedroom door for a long time that night, wanting to explain, but not finding the courage. My pride, once my shield, now barred my way. Still, I was determined to find the truth. I became a detective in my own life. I swept through the church office, my own drawers, even old receipts stuffed away. I traced and retraced my steps on that rainy day, sketching routes in my mind, considering every angle. I studied the photographs, blowing them up for hints, a reflection here, a blurred outline there. My instincts kept circling round to my family. My sister-in-law Jonghee's name hovered at the edge of everything. Months before, we'd had a bitter dispute about hospital bills, and the air between us had never cleared. Our group chat, once mundane, had grown tense with cold politeness since that falling out. It was easy to let suspicion fester, even if I hated myself for it. In my mind, I toggled between accusing others and turning that suspicion inward. Sometimes suspicion offered a strange comfort. Turning blame away from myself felt like relief, even if only for a heartbeat. My mind pooled with doubts. I questioned whether I'd misplaced the envelope, or whether worse, someone I'd called family could have nabbed it. The possibility that the fault was mine hovered like a storm I could not face, at least not yet. All the while, the world closed in steadily. I stopped wearing my Sunday coat, afraid the smell of that day's rain might make the memories sharper. Every footstep in the church hallway echoed with private meanings. My regrets weighed down my steps, a leaden drag I could not shed. I was stuck, two paths diverging before me, neither one leading to peace. Then, from the most ordinary place, the answer revealed itself. One cool afternoon, with laundry flapping in the wind, I decided, almost by accident, to air out that rain-soaked coat at last. Pulling it from the closet, I noticed a heaviness in one pocket. My fingers searched and closed around something stiff and flat. A chill seized me. I drew it out carefully. It was the missing beige envelope with the hopeful sticker still attached, sealed, untouched. In that moment, everything collapsed and rebuilt itself at once. The envelope, my own, my responsibility. The truth was too clear to ignore. I had forgotten, in my fluster and haste, that I'd slipped it in my pocket and left it there through all that torment. My own mistake, plain as day. I stood frozen for several minutes, unable to face the relief or the shame. The confusion of that rainy day replayed in my mind. Water on linoleum, voices raised, arms full of envelopes, the harried rush out the door. My pride, my foolish pride, had hidden the answer in plain sight and let every relationship around me suffer for it. I carried the envelope to the church, every step heavy with dread. It felt almost like approaching a judge and jury. When I entered, Old wood and dust pressed close around me. I bowed my head, pretending to pray, but really searching for the will to carry this through. There was a path I could have taken, a quiet replacement, no explanation given, letting the matter dissolve like sugar in tea. But that would have left the poison brewing, and the cost would be too high. I knew then I had to confess. The words I wrote were few. On a slip of paper beside the account book, I recorded the truth. The envelope had been lost by my own hand, and now was returned. I left no excuses. I saw, in that act, every painful thing. My suspicion of Jung-hee, my resentment at my daughter's silence, the festering church quarrels, all stoked by my desperate grasp at saving face. My need to appear perfect blinded me more than any rainstorm ever could. That night, my phone shuddered on the way home. The group chat flashed to life as someone reported discovering my note in the church office. My hands shook as I typed out the truth, simply, plainly. I made a mistake, and I found it. My message landed amid a tumble of relief, reprimands, awkward silence, and condolences. Mi-jung replied at last, briefly, but her message was less important than the quiet warmth that seemed to seep in through the cracks between us. We were, at last, together in our humanity. By the following week, I stepped down from my position as church treasurer. There were, as always, some who accepted, some who grumbled, and the old church conflicts rolled on. But beneath all that, I realized I was not quite the woman I'd been before. Softer, maybe, and more honest with myself. Here lies the twist I never expected. All the while I suspected others, convinced myself their faults could absolve my own. It was me who blundered. My pride became the true thief, stealing trust not only from those around me, but from myself. I let suspicion mask my fear of being ordinary, of being simply human and capable of error. I spent many afternoons after that sweeping up leaves in the churchyard. The rumors faded as quietly as the wind gathered the twigs, but I carried the weight of harmed relationships, knowing some strains would not mend so easily. In time, Jung-hee met my eyes again, the stiffness receding as the tension drained away. Mi-jung placed a hot bowl of soup before me one evening, saying nothing. The warmth was more eloquent than any words could have been. Now, in quiet reflection, I ask myself, and anyone who listens, how many of us have allowed pride to cloud our eyes, allowed fear of shame to keep us from admitting our mistakes? I am not a thief, but I am flawed. It took losing my dignity to discover the power in standing bare before the truth. Perhaps the greatest courage is not defending our reputations, but repairing what we've broken. Beginning, always, with ourselves. Is there a stubborn regret or a hidden error in your heart, waiting for such courage to bring it to light?